Standing beneath the towering stones of Stonehenge or gazing up at the Great Pyramids, it's impossible not to feel a sense of awe. How on earth did ancient civilizations accomplish such feats? The sheer scale, the precision, the weight of these monuments defies logic, sparking a question that's echoed through centuries. Could these megalithic wonders have been built by giants? Legends from cultures worldwide speak of colossal beings who walked the earth, shaping the landscape with their bare hands. The Bible mentions the Nephilim, the Greeks wrote of the Cyclopes, and indigenous traditions whisper of towering figures who moved mountains. But is there any truth behind these myths, or are they simply stories we've crafted to explain the unexplainable? Archaeologists have long dismissed the idea of giants as pure folklore, attributing megalithic structures to human ingenuity, advanced engineering, and sheer manpower. Yet, when you examine the evidence or lack thereof, questions linger. How did pre-industrial societies quarry, transport, and lift stones weighing hundreds of tons without the technology we'd consider essential today? Some sites feature blocks so perfectly fitted together that not even a blade of grass can slip between them, a level of precision that rivals modern craftsmanship. And then there are the gaps in the historical record, missing tools, absent blueprints, and mysteries that mainstream explanations struggle to fully account for. This is where the theories take a fascinating turn. What if the myths weren't just allegories? What if they were fragmented memories of something real? From elongated skulls found in Peru to oversized skeletal remains reported in early excavation records, there are tantalizing clues that challenge the conventional narrative. In this video, we'll sift through the evidence, separating fact from fiction, and explore whether these ancient legends might hold a grain of truth. Could giants have once roamed the earth, leaving behind these monumental puzzles for us to decipher? Or are we underestimating the brilliance of our ancestors? Strap in, because this journey will take you deep into the shadows of history, where the line between myth and reality blurs in the most unexpected ways. Megaliths are more than just massive stones, they're ancient puzzles carved by time itself. These colossal structures, some weighing hundreds of tons, were erected thousands of years before modern machinery, leaving us to wonder how. Take Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a sprawling complex dating back over 11,000 years, older than Stonehenge by a staggering 6 millennia. Its towering T-shaped pillars, intricately carved with animal reliefs, were buried deliberately, as if hiding secrets we've only begun to uncover. Then there's Easter Island's Moai, those enigmatic stone giants staring inland, each one chiseled from volcanic rock and transported miles across rugged terrain. The precision of their construction baffles experts. How did a society without wheels or metal tools accomplish this? But the mysteries don't end there. Baalbek in Lebanon boasts the largest known megalithic block, the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighing an estimated 1,200 tons. Nearby, the Roman-built Temple of Jupiter sits atop older foundations of similarly massive stones, their origins lost to time. And in Sacsayhuaman, Peru, walls of zigzagging limestone fit together like a perfect jigsaw, their edges so smooth that even today you can't slip a sheet of paper between them. These aren't just feats of engineering, they're borderline impossible by the standards of the eras they come from. What ties these sites together isn't just their scale, but their timing. Many predate written history, built by cultures we know little about. No records explain their methods, and the tools we found seem inadequate for the task. This void in understanding has led some to ask, could the legends of giants be more than myth? After all, if you didn't know about cranes or hydraulics, how else would you explain stones lifted like toys? Whether these stories are symbolic or rooted in something tangible, one thing's certain: the megaliths stand as silent witnesses to a past far more complex than we've been taught. From the misty highlands of Scotland to the sun-baked deserts of Mesopotamia, Nearly every ancient culture has preserved stories of giants being so enormous they could reshape the world with their hands. The Bible speaks of the Nephilim, towering descendants of the sons of God, who walked the earth before the great flood, their presence so threatening they became synonymous with corruption and divine retribution. Greek myths tell of the Titans, primal deities who warred with the Olympians and were said to have hurled mountains as weapons. Even the indigenous peoples of North America passed down tales of the Stonehenge, a race of red-haired giants who built vast stone cities before mysteriously vanishing. These legends share eerie similarities. Giants aren't just random monsters, they're often portrayed as architects of the impossible. In Polynesian lore, the godlike Maui used his colossal strength to drag entire islands from the sea. The Inca spoke of the Pururucas, stone warriors who came to life to defend sacred sites. And in India, the Ramayana describes the demon king Ravana lifting entire mountains to build his fortress city. What's striking is how many of these stories intersect with real megalithic sites. The walls of Cusco, said to have been built by giants in Inca tradition, mirror the precision of Sacsayhuaman. Ireland's Giant's Causeway, with its unnatural hexagonal columns, was attributed to the giant Finn McCool. But why do these myths persist across oceans and millennia? One theory suggests they're distorted memories of an advanced but forgotten civilization, perhaps survivors of a cataclysm who seemed godlike to later cultures. Another possibility, they're allegories for natural forces, with giants symbolizing earthquakes or glaciers that carved landscapes humans couldn't explain. Yet the most tantalizing idea is the simplest. What if these stories contain fragments of truth? When early explorers in the Americas reported finding enormous skeletons, some allegedly reaching 10 feet tall, were they exaggerating or documenting something science has since overlooked? The debate rages on, buried as deeply as the stones themselves. The Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text excluded from most biblical canons, paints a vivid picture of the Nephilim, hybrid beings born from the union of fallen angels and human women. These towering figures were described as corrupt and violent, their very existence triggering the Great Flood as divine punishment. But Enoch's account goes further, suggesting these giants possessed forbidden knowledge, even teaching humanity advanced skills like metalworking and astronomy. Could this be a distorted memory of a lost civilization with technology that seemed supernatural to later generations? Fast forward to the Sumerian king list, where rulers before the flood are said to have reigned for tens of thousands of years, their lifespans and feats defying logic. One ruler, Gilgamesh, was explicitly called 2/3 god and 1/3 man, standing head and shoulders above ordinary people in both stature and power. Then there's the testimony of conquistadors like Pedro Cieza de Leon, who chronicled strange discoveries while marching through the Andes in the 16th century. He wrote of locals showing him massive bones, some still clad in armor, claiming they belonged to a race of giants who once dominated the land. Similar reports surfaced in North America during the 19th century, with newspapers like the New York Times publishing accounts of oversized skeletons unearthed from burial mounds. But here's the catch: many of these artifacts vanished into private collections or were dismissed as hoaxes by mainstream scholars. Skeptics argue that misidentified mastodon bones or tribal burial practices could explain the findings, yet the consistency of these reports across cultures and centuries is hard to ignore. Modern archaeology faces a dilemma when confronting these accounts. On one hand, no verified skeletal remains of giants have survived rigorous scientific scrutiny. On the other, the destruction or loss of potential evidence, whether through looting, natural decay, or institutional bias, leaves room for doubt. Take the case of Ecuador's craniums of the Andes, elongated skulls with cranial volumes exceeding human norms. While some attribute their shape to ritual head binding, others point to genetic anomalies or even extraterrestrial theories. The truth may lie somewhere between myth and oversight. perhaps ancient cultures encountered remnants of unusually tall individuals weaving their existence into legend. Or maybe these stories serve as metaphors for humanity's awe and fear of forces greater than themselves. Either way, the persistence of these tales suggests they're more than just campfire stories. They're echoes of a past we're still struggling to decode. By the late 19th century, newspapers across America were buzzing with sensational headlines. Archaeologists had unearthed skeletons of impossible size. The October 9, 1895 edition of the Pittsburgh Press claimed a burial mound in Pennsylvania yielded 7 skeletons, the tallest measuring 7 feet 6 inches, with skulls twice as large as those of modern men. Similar reports emerged from Wisconsin, where the Milwaukee Sentinel described a race of giants discovered near Lake Delavan in 1912, their elongated skulls and double rows of teeth defying conventional anthropology. Even the New York Times got in on the act, publishing accounts of 9-foot skeletons found in Tennessee, wrapped in finely woven garments that crumbled to dust upon exposure. But the most controversial thread in this tapestry involves the Smithsonian Institution. Multiple 19th-century archaeologists like John Wesley Powell documented oversized bones during surveys of Native American mounds. Yet many specimens seemingly vanished from records, fueling accusations of a cover-up. Former Smithsonian curator Thomas Townsend Brown once claimed the institution deliberately destroyed or suppressed evidence of giants to protect mainstream historical narratives. While skeptics dismiss these claims as conspiracy fodder, the absence of key skeletal collections leaves unresolved questions. Case in point, the so-called Smithsonian boxes, crates of oversized bones reportedly shipped to the institution in the early 20th century, only to be lost or deaccessioned without proper documentation. Not every discovery holds up under scrutiny. The infamous Cardiff giant, a 10-foot petrified man unearthed in 1869 New York, was exposed as a gypsum hoax crafted by a tobacconist. Similarly, the Giant of Castelnau, a set of oversized French bones from 1890, was later identified as prehistoric elephant fossils, yet some cases resist easy dismissal. Take Lovelock Cave in Nevada, where miners in 1911 found dozens of red-haired mummies alongside 15-inch sandals and duckbill-shaped artifacts. Local Paiute oral history describes battling the CT-Ka, a tribe of red-haired cannibalistic giants centuries earlier. While mainstream scholars attribute the remains to early Native Americans, the persistence of these legends and the eerie physical evidence keeps the debate alive. What are we to make of these fractured narratives? On one hand, misidentified fossils, exaggerations, and outright frauds litter the historical record. On the other, the sheer volume of cross-cultural reports from Native American traditions to colonial-era diaries suggests something more than mass hallucination. Perhaps the truth lies in the middle, not a race of biblical giants, but isolated populations with genetic conditions like gigantism or Marfan syndrome, their remains later mythologized. Or maybe these stories reflect humanity's timeless habit of turning the unexplained into legend. Either way, the skeletons, whether lost, hoaxed, or misunderstood, remain one of history's most tantalizing loose ends. Consider the colossal stone blocks of Baalbek's trilithon, each one weighing as much as a small spacecraft, roughly 1,200 tons. To put that into perspective, that's equivalent to stacking 2 fully loaded Boeing 747 jets on top of each other. The sheer logistics of moving these stones defy conventional understanding. Modern cranes capable of handling such loads didn't exist until the 20th century, yet these stones were quarried miles away, lifted over 20 feet in the air, and fitted together with laser-like precision over 2,000 years ago. How ancient Roman accounts credit giants or divine intervention, while mainstream archaeology points to ramps, levers, and thousands of laborers, but the math rarely adds up. Take the famous experiment by a team from the University of Amsterdam attempting to replicate the transport of a smaller Baalbek block, a mere 340 tons. Using wooden sledges, ropes, and a small army of volunteers, they barely managed to drag it a few yards on greased tracks after weeks of preparation. Multiply that challenge by 4, and you're still not close to Baalbek's giants. Even more baffling are the megaliths at Sacsayhuaman, where stones were hauled uphill from quarries over 12 miles distant, with no clear evidence of wheels or draft animals in pre-Columbian Peru. The Incas claimed their gods transformed the stones, making them float into place. Could there be lost techniques behind these legends? Then there's the precision problem. At Puma Punku in Bolivia, andesite blocks weighing over 100 tons were cut with geometric perfection, right angles, drill holes, and grooves that suggest tools far beyond copper chisels. Metallurgists note that such work would require diamond-tipped saws or advanced abrasives, yet no such tools have ever been found. The conventional explanation, patient hammering with stone tools, seems almost laughable when you run the numbers. One estimate suggests carving a single Puma Punku block by hand would take a team decades. This leaves us with a paradox. Either ancient civilizations possessed forgotten technologies, perhaps even machinery, that rival our own, or the legends of giants carry a kernel of truth. Could massive beings with greater strength and stature have manipulated these stones like children's building blocks? Or were human ingenuity and teamwork so vastly underestimated that we've invented myths to fill the gaps in our understanding? The stones remain silent, but their weight speaks volumes. Deep in southeastern Turkey, where the dusty plains meet the horizon, lies a site that rewrote human history, Göbekli Tepe. Dating back an astonishing 12,000 years, this sprawling complex predates agriculture by millennia, meaning its builders weren't settled farmers but nomadic hunter-gatherers. Yet they carved and erected monumental T-shaped pillars, some towering 16 feet tall and weighing up to 20 tons, with intricate depictions of foxes, scorpions, and vultures adorning their surfaces. The sheer scale of labor required defies everything we thought we knew about prehistoric societies. How did people without permanent settlements, let alone metal tools, accomplish this? Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist who dedicated his life to excavating the site, believed Göbekli Tepe was a ceremonial center, a sacred space where clans gathered for rituals. But even he admitted the construction methods remain a mystery. The pillars were quarried from bedrock over 300 feet away, shaped with flint tools, and transported uphill without wheels or domesticated animals. Some researchers suggest teams of hundreds dragged them using ropes and log rollers, yet no evidence of such infrastructure survives. The precision is equally baffling. Pillars were slotted into carefully carved bedrock sockets, arranged in concentric circles with an almost astronomical alignment. This leads to the provocative question Schmidt himself entertained. Could Göbekli Tepe's builders have had help? Local folklore speaks of ancient giants who once roamed the region, their exploits etched into Kurdish and Armenian legends. Even more intriguing, some pillars feature carvings of humanoid figures with elongated heads and arms folded in a pose resembling the Mesopotamian god Enki, later associated with the Anunnaki, a race of those who from heaven to earth came. While mainstream scholars dismiss these connections as fringe speculation, the timing of Göbekli Tepe is undeniably eerie. It emerged just as the last ice age waned, a period some theorists link to cosmic impacts or climatic chaos that might have disrupted earlier advanced cultures. Alternative explanations range from the plausible to the extraordinary. Could lost technologies like sound levitation or vibrational tools hinted at in Tibetan texts have aided the builders, or did these hunter-gatherers possess organizational skills far beyond our assumptions, pooling knowledge across generations to create something timeless? The site was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE, as if sealing away its secrets. Today, only 5% of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated, leaving the rest to whisper tantalizing possibilities. Whether the work of human ingenuity or something more enigmatic, one thing's certain: this stone labyrinth challenges us to rethink not just who built it, but what our ancestors were truly capable of. Isolated in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, Easter Island's moai stand as silent sentinels of a lost civilization, their blank eyes staring inland as if guarding secrets buried in time. Carved from compressed volcanic ash at Roroku Quarry, these towering figures average 13 feet tall and weigh a staggering 14 tons each, with the largest unfinished statue, nicknamed El Gigante, stretching 70 feet and tipping the scales at nearly 270 tons. But the real mystery isn't just their size, it's how they traveled miles across rugged terrain without wheels, draft animals, or even ample timber for rolling logs. The Rapa Nui people's oral traditions offer a tantalizing clue. The statues walked. According to elders, the moai were animated by mana, a spiritual force bestowed by ancestors. Skilled handlers, they claimed, could make the giants walk by rocking them forward with ropes mimicking a human stride. This legend gained unexpected credibility in 2012, when archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo demonstrated how just 18 people could maneuver a 10-foot replica upright by gently swaying it side to side, a method leaving distinctive wear patterns matching ancient roads. Yet even this ingenious technique can't fully explain the island's most perplexing moai, like those perched on steep cliffs or crowned with multi-ton red stone hats called pukao. Digging deeper into Rapa Nui lore reveals another layer: the legend of the Hanau Ep, a mysterious race of long-eared giants said to have dominated the island before being overthrown in a brutal uprising. Spanish accounts from the 18th century describe meeting islanders with elongated earlobes stretched by heavy ornaments, a practice some link to the Hanau Ep's distinctive appearance. Even more intriguing, skeletal remains found in caves near the quarries exhibit unusual robusticity, with thicker bones and larger skulls than typical Polynesians. Could these have been descendants of the supposed giants, their physical stature making the back-breaking work of moai transport seem effortless? Modern science offers alternative explanations. Geoarchaeologists note the island's path slopes slightly downward from quarries to platforms, allowing controlled descents. Teams may have used a combination of sledges, lubricated tracks, and pivoting techniques to walk the moai upright. As for the pukao, experiments show rolling them cylindrical sides down could explain their placement. But the Hanau Ep legend persists, echoing a global pattern where megalithic achievements become attributed to supernatural beings. Whether these stories preserve fragmented history or symbolize cultural divides, like the island's eventual civil war, the moai remain a testament to human resilience. Stranded on the world's most remote inhabited island, the Rapa Nui didn't just survive. They engineered marvels that continue to defy simple explanation. Their legacy, like the statues themselves, stands balanced between myth and mortalist precision. Long before archaeologists puzzled over Stonehenge's bluestones, medieval chronicler Geoffrey of Monmouth spun a fantastical yarn about its origins. In his 12th century work History of the Kings of Britain, he claimed the wizard Merlin orchestrated the monument's construction by relocating a mystical giant's ring from Ireland using magic. According to the legend, the stones were originally healing pillars erected by giants, beings so mighty they could arrange colossal rocks like children stacking blocks. It's easy to dismiss this as pure fiction, but why would Geoffrey and countless other storytellers across cultures reach for giants as the default explanation for megaliths? Modern archaeology offers a more grounded, if no less impressive theory. Experiments show that teams of workers could have hauled Stonehenge's smaller bluestones, weighing up to 4 tons each, on wooden sledges greased with animal fat, dragging them overland from Wales' Preseli Hills. For the massive sarsen stones, some exceeding 50 tons, researchers propose a system of ropes, sledges, and pivoted wooden tracks. Yet even these methods raise eyebrows. A 2008 study by University of Exeter engineers estimated moving just one sarsen would require 1,100 people pulling simultaneously, a logistical nightmare for a prehistoric society. Add to that the precision required to shape the stones with nothing but stone mauls and antler picks, and the line between human achievement and supernatural feat starts to blur. The recurring theme of giants in these narratives might reveal something deeper about human psychology. When faced with the unexplained, we instinctively reach for the extraordinary. Ancient writers lacked the vocabulary of physics or engineering, so they turned to the next closest thing, beings whose strength matched the scale of the task. Giants became shorthand for the unimaginable, a placeholder for knowledge not yet uncovered. But what if there's more to it? Local folklore around Salisbury Plain speaks of a time when the old ones walked the land, their footsteps sinking into the chalk to form the region's trenches. Could these stories preserve a kernel of truth, perhaps describing an extinct culture of taller, stronger people whose feats became exaggerated over millennia? The contrast between legend and science highlights a fascinating tension. On one hand, Geoffrey's Merlin tale is demonstrably myth. Stonehenge predates the wizard's supposed era by over 2,000 years. On the other, modern reconstructions of ancient techniques often feel just as speculative. We've never found definitive evidence of the sledges or ropes used, and the logistics of quarries miles away remain hotly debated. Maybe giants aren't the answer, but the persistence of these stories reminds us that some mysteries refuse to be neatly solved. Whether through magic, mythology, or manpower, Stonehenge stands as a testament to humanity's drive to reach beyond the possible, leaving us to wonder. Did our ancestors need giants to explain these wonders, or did they simply become giants themselves in the act of building them? At the heart of Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, the ruins of Baalbek loom like a puzzle carved in stone. The Romans, master builders of their age, constructed the Temple of Jupiter here 2,000 years ago, its towering columns dwarfing visitors even in their broken state. But the real mystery lies beneath. The temple's foundation is built atop 3 colossal limestone blocks known as the Trilithon, each weighing an estimated 1,200 tons. That's heavier than 3 fully loaded Airbus A380 jets combined. Even more baffling, these stones weren't quarried nearby, they were hauled from a site over half a mile away, then hoisted 20 feet into the air and fitted together with joints so precise you couldn't slip a razor blade between them. Roman engineering was advanced, but nothing in their surviving texts explains this. Local legends offer a startling alternative. Lebanese oral tradition speaks of a race of giants who rebuilt Baalbek after the Great Flood, using stones so massive that only beings of unimaginable strength could lift them. The Arabic name for the site, Hajar el-Hubla, translates to Stone of the Pregnant Woman, referencing a myth that a pregnant giantess once carried these blocks as offerings to the gods. Even the Roman historian Macrobius hinted at something extraordinary, writing that Baalbek's original builders were older than time, constructing the platform as a landing place for celestial visitors. These tales gain eerie resonance when you examine the stones themselves. The Trilithon blocks show tool marks inconsistent with Roman chisels, deep, straight grooves that suggest some form of advanced cutting technology. Nearby lies an even larger block, the Stone of the South, abandoned in its quarry. Weighing nearly 1,650 tons, it's the largest known megalith ever cut by human hands. Modern engineers calculate that moving it would require the force of 24,000 men pulling simultaneously, a logistical impossibility for any ancient army. How did the Romans, pragmatic record keepers who documented everything from aqueduct slopes to mortar recipes, leave no account of lifting these behemoths? Their own writings credit the platform's construction to a legendary king named Solomon or the god Jupiter, brushing aside the physics-defying reality. Some researchers propose they simply co-opted an older, pre-existing structure, one built by a civilization lost to history. Archaeologist Jean-Pierre Adam demonstrated that Roman cranes, while sophisticated, maxed out at lifting 60-ton columns. The trilithon stones are 20 times heavier. Could the giants of folklore represent a metaphorical truth? Perhaps a culture with forgotten techniques, lever systems, counterweight cranes, or even acoustic levitation hinted at in obscure Tibetan texts once thrived here. Or maybe the legends preserve a distorted memory of a taller, stronger people whose feats seemed superhuman to later generations. What's undeniable is that Baalbek's megaliths stand as a silent rebuke to our assumptions about the past. The Romans, for all their brilliance, may have been mere inheritors of a mystery far older and far stranger than their temples suggest. The stone walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru are a masterclass in precision. Massive limestone blocks weighing up to 300 tons, fitted together so seamlessly that their edges seem melted into place. No mortar, no gaps, just interlocking angles defying the passage of centuries. But it's the H-shaped joints carved into these stones that truly baffle researchers. These intricate notches, found in sites like Ollantaytambo and Coricancha, resemble modern modular construction, allowing blocks to lock together like Lego pieces. The question isn't just how they were carved, but why. If these were simple dwellings or fortifications, such painstaking precision seems excessive. Mainstream archaeology attributes these feats to the Inca, who supposedly hammered the stones into shape using bronze and stone tools. Yet experiments tell a different story. Modern stonemasons attempting to replicate the work with period-appropriate tools quickly hit roadblocks. Andesite, the volcanic stone used at sites like Puma Punku, ranks 7 on the Mohs hardness scale, denser than the copper or bronze chisels the Inca possessed. Try carving granite with a butter knife and you'll grasp the problem. Even with endless patience, the H-joint's geometric perfection suggests tools far beyond rudimentary hammers. Then there's the enigma of the drill holes. At sites like Tiwanaku, cylindrical bores pierce solid stone with uncanny uniformity, their interiors spiraled as if made by a high-speed bit. Engineer Christopher Dunn famously compared them to marks left by modern diamond-tipped drills, noting the same precise striations. How could a civilization without the wheel achieve such machine-like precision? Some researchers point to lost techniques like vitrification, using heat or chemicals to soften stone, evidenced by vitrified surfaces at certain megalithic sites. Ancient texts like the Hindu Vedas describe weapons that could melt rock, while Spanish chroniclers recorded Inca legends of plants whose juices dissolved stone. But the most provocative clues lie in the stones themselves. At Sacsayhuaman, certain blocks bear what appear to be tool marks from a circular saw, their edges too straight, too smooth to result from hand chiseling. The logical leap: either these cultures had access to advanced machinery we've yet to uncover, or the legends of giants beings with the strength to manipulate stone like clay hold a sliver of truth. After all, if you could lift 100-ton blocks effortlessly, carving them with bare hands might not seem so far-fetched. The stones whisper a riddle we're still deciphering. Were the builders of these sites merely human or something more? Beneath the sunlit streets of modern Malta lies a subterranean world that hums with mystery, the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni. Carved from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago, this labyrinth of chambers isn't just an architectural marvel, it's an acoustic masterpiece. Certain niches and corridors resonate at precisely 110 Hz, a frequency known to alter brain activity, inducing trance-like states in listeners. Sound waves travel through these passageways with eerie precision, creating standing waves that amplify whispers into thunderous echoes. To stand in the oracle room, where a deep voice can reverberate for nearly 8 seconds, is to experience what researchers call architectural psychoacoustics, a design so advanced it predates modern sound engineering by millennia. What's even more striking is how this precision mirrors other megalithic sites. Newgrange in Ireland, with its corbelled roof, channels sound upward like a stone amplifier. Chavin de Huanta in Peru features narrow ducts that transform rushing water into roaring jaguar growls through sonic vibration. These aren't happy accidents, they're evidence of a sophisticated understanding of harmonics lost to time. But here's the twist. Human vocal ranges typically max out around 300 Hz, yet many of these spaces optimize for frequencies far lower. Could this suggest the builders had deeper voices, or perhaps, as some theorists propose, were physically larger? Legends from Malta speak of the Gigantoja, giants who erected the island's megalithic temples, their name literally meaning Tower of the Giants. Local folklore claims they carried boulders on their backs while singing in voices that shook the earth. If such beings existed, their vocal cords might have naturally resonated at these lower frequencies, turning chambers like the hypogeum into natural amplifiers for their speech. Modern studies show that larger larynxes produce deeper tones. Think elephants communicating via infrasound. Might these sites have been designed as colossal communication devices or ritual spaces where the giants' voices could reach supernatural volumes? The physics only deepens the intrigue. At certain points in the hypogeum, two people speaking softly in separate chambers can hear each other more clearly than if standing side by side, an effect achieved through waveform interference. This level of acoustic knowledge implies experimentation spanning generations, yet no surviving records or tools explain how Neolithic people achieved this. Alternative theories point to trial and error over centuries, but the precision seems too deliberate. Some researchers speculate the builders used water-filled containers or vibrating strings to map sound waves, while others wonder if they possessed an innate, almost instinctual grasp of resonance lost to modernity. Whether created by giants or an exceptionally gifted culture, the hypogeum's acoustics challenge our assumptions about prehistoric innovation. These weren't just spaces for the dead, they were instruments tuned to frequencies that still stir something primal in visitors today. As you trace your fingers along the walls, you can't help but feel the vibration of a question. Were these stones shaped to channel human voices, or something far older and far stranger? High on a plateau near the South African village of Mpuluzi, a single indentation in the rock stops visitors in their tracks, a massive 4-foot-long footprint, its 5 toe marks pressed distinctly into solid granite. Locals call it Goliath's footprint, attributing it to the legendary biblical giant, but this isn't the only one. From a 90-centimeter-long imprint in the Himalayan foothills of Nepal to a giant's stride preserved in stone near the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, these geological oddities appear across continents, embedded in the very bedrock. To the untrained eye, they look uncannily human, just scaled up to impossible proportions. Geologists offer a more mundane explanation. These are often examples of erosional features or potholes formed by swirling water currents smoothing depressions into rock over millennia. The Mpuluzi print, for instance, lies in granite that dates back over 3 billion years, long before any human or humanoid could have walked the earth. The toe-like shapes, mere coincidences of weathering where softer minerals wore away faster than surrounding stone. Even the heel and arch are products of fracturing patterns, not an actual footstep. Yet when you stand before these formations, it's hard to shake the eerie feeling they provoke. The human brain is wired to seek familiar patterns, a phenomenon called pareidolia, but the consistency of these prints across cultures raises eyebrows. Take China's Longyu County, where a 20-meter-long footprint is etched into a cliff face. Local Zhuang people call it the Immortal's Tread, tied to a creation myth where giants shaped the mountains. In Australia's Blue Mountains, Aboriginal lore speaks of the Murrigan, towering beings whose footfalls became waterholes. Even the Cherokee tell of the Judaculla Rock in North Carolina, a soapstone boulder covered in petroglyphs, and a massive, seven-toed print said to belong to a slant-eyed giant. These parallels suggest something deeper than geological coincidence, a shared cultural memory, perhaps, of a time when larger-than-life figures walked the land. But could there be a middle ground? Paleontologists note that dinosaur tracks were often misinterpreted as giant bird or human prints before science catalogued their true origins. The infamous Devil's Footprints in Devon, England, a trail of hoof-like marks frozen in snow in 1855, were later linked to escaped kangaroos or experimental balloons. Similarly, some giant prints may fossilize the footsteps of extinct megafauna like ground sloths or mastodons, their shapes distorted by time. Yet the sheer size of formations like Goliath's footprint defies even these explanations. What's striking is how these imprints cluster near known megalithic sites. Sri Lanka's Adam's Foot, a sacred depression atop Adam's Peak, lies just miles from the ancient city of Anuradhapura with its colossal stupas. The South African print sits within reach of the 1,000-year-old stone terraces of Mpumalanga. Could these landmarks have inspired or been inspired by the footprints? Whether natural wonders or deliberate carvings, their persistence in local mythology hints at a time when the line between geology and legend blurred into something far more compelling than mere rock formations. After all, if the earth itself bears the marks of giants, who are we to say they never walked among us? The term cyclopean masonry conjures images of walls so colossal, so impossibly heavy, that they seem the work of myth rather than man. These structures, built from irregular boulders often weighing dozens of tons, fit together like jagged jigsaw pieces without mortar, yet they've withstood earthquakes and millennia. The name itself comes from the ancient Greeks, who believed only the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants from Homer's epics, could have lifted such stones. Mycenae's iconic Lion Gate, with its lintel block estimated at 20 tons, was said to be the handiwork of these towering beings. But Greece isn't the only place where myth and megaliths collide. Over in Peru, Sacsayhuaman's zigzagging walls, with their 300-ton limestone blocks, were claimed by the Inca to have been built by the Viracocha's godlike giants who melted stone with their breath. What's fascinating isn't just the scale of these walls, but the consistency of the giant legends attached to them. Later cultures, encountering ruins they couldn't explain, reached for the same archetype, beings whose strength bridged the gap between the possible and the impossible. Consider the Nurag Towers of Sardinia, their interlocking basalt blocks weighing up to 30 tons. Local folklore insists they were erected by the Jonas, a race of giant witches who worked under moonlight. Or Japan's Ishi no Hoden, a bizarre cubic monolith near Kobe, which tradition says was tossed into place by the demon god Oni. Even medieval Europeans, stumbling upon Neolithic dolmens, dubbed them giants' tables. Archaeologists argue these attributions reflect a universal human tendency. When faced with the inexplicable, we anthropomorphize the unknown. With no records of the original builders, later societies projected their myths onto the stones. But could there be more to it? At Mycenae, some cyclopean walls incorporate drafted margins, where stones are precisely beveled at the edges to fit snugly, a technique seen in Inca and Egyptian masonry. This suggests a shared, possibly lost knowledge of stoneworking. And then there's the physicality. Moving these blocks would require not just manpower, but a way to pivot and adjust them mid-air, like threading a needle with a truck. Some researchers propose that the one-eyed descriptor might hold a clue. The Cyclopes were smiths in Greek myth, forging Zeus's thunderbolts. Could their single eye symbolize a tool, say, a central lever or a monopolized focus of labor? Alternatively, elongated skulls found near many megalithic sites have sparked theories about cone-headed elites directing construction. Others point to gigantism, a real medical condition causing extreme height, which might have produced individuals who seemed like living legends. What's undeniable is that cyclopean masonry represents a global phenomenon. a fingerprint of cultures separated by oceans yet united by their awe of the colossal. Whether the work of giants, forgotten technologies, or sheer human tenacity, these walls stand as silent challenges to our understanding. They ask us to reconsider not just who built them, but why the answer always seems to loom so large in our imaginations. The book of Genesis tells a cryptic story in chapter 6, one that sparked debates for centuries. Before the Great Flood, it describes the sons of God mingling with human women, producing offspring known as the Nephilim. These beings are called the mighty men of old, the men of renown, a phrase that echoes with unsettling implications. Were they simply legendary warriors or something far more extraordinary? Ancient Jewish texts like the Book of Enoch elaborate, painting the Nephilim as giants who grew increasingly violent, corrupting the earth until their destruction became inevitable. But what if their legacy wasn't just chaos? What if these hybrid beings left behind physical traces, monuments so colossal they defied human capability? Enter the Tower of Babel, described in Genesis 11 as a ziggurat reaching toward the heavens. It was a project so audacious it provoked divine intervention. While Scripture doesn't specify its construction methods, early traditions hint at something remarkable. The first-century historian Flavius Josephus wrote that Noah's rebellious descendants used bitumen and baked bricks to build it, but added a tantalizing detail. The tower's foundation was made of stones so large they could hardly be moved by modern machinery. Could these have been megaliths? Ancient Mesopotamian ziggurats like the ruins of Ur do feature massive stone bases beneath their baked brick layers. And the Bible's timeline is provocative. Babel's construction began soon after the flood, when the Nephilim's hybrid descendants might still have walked the earth. This isn't just biblical speculation. The Quran's version of the story, in Surah Al-Qasas, describes Pharaoh commissioning a towering structure built by Haman, a name some scholars link to the Amalekites, a tribe later described as giants. Even more intriguing, the Greek historian Herodotus wrote of Babylon's walls, claiming they were so vast that 2 chariots could pass each other on top. While his account postdates Babel by millennia, it reflects a persistent tradition of preternatural construction in the region. Could these accounts preserve fragmented memories of a megalithic age fueled by beings whose strength and knowledge surpassed ordinary humans? The connections grow deeper when you examine pre-flood legends. Sumerian king lists speak of antediluvian rulers reigning for tens of thousands of years, overseeing advancements that vanished beneath the waters. The Epic of Gilgamesh, another Mesopotamian text, describes its hero as 2/3 god, towering over ordinary men and consorting with divine beings. If the Nephilim represented a fusion of celestial and human lineages, might their hybrid vigor have extended to engineering prowess? Modern geneticists acknowledge that hybrid species often exhibit heteroses, enhanced traits like size and resilience. Applied to the Nephilim, this could explain both their physical stature and their alleged feats of construction. But the Tower of Babel's real significance might lie in its symbolism. Its builders sought to make a name for themselves, defying divine order. In this light, the tower becomes more than a building. It's a metaphor for humanity's recurring ambition to harness forbidden knowledge, a theme mirrored in megalithic sites worldwide. From Baalbek to Sacsayhuaman, these structures seem to whisper, "We once reached higher than you can fathom." Whether the work of fallen angels, their offspring, or simply lost human ingenuity, the stones refuse to give up their secrets easily. They stand as silent witnesses to a time when the line between myth and history was perhaps thinner than we dare admit. Across the vast expanse of the Americas, from the dense forests of the Northeast to the arid deserts of the Southwest, indigenous oral traditions whisper of a time when giants walked the land. The Choctaw people tell of the Nahalo, pale-skinned giants who hurled massive stones with terrifying ease, beings so fearsome they were said to devour humans who strayed too close. These aren't isolated stories. The Paiute of Nevada recount battles with the CTK, red-haired giants who took refuge in Lovelock Cave, their remains allegedly discovered alongside 15-inch sandals and twisted Choled duck decoys. Even the Aztecs preserved legends of the Quinametzin, a race of towering beings who built the pyramids of Teotihuacan under the watchful eye of the gods. But how much of this is metaphor and how much might be rooted in physical reality? Sites like Mystery Hill in New Hampshire, often called America's Stonehenge, add fuel to the debate. Here, a sprawling complex of stone chambers, aligned astronomical markers, and massive dolmens sprawls across 30 acres. Mainstream archaeologists attribute it to colonial-era farmers or possibly pre-Columbian Celtic travelers, but local Algonquian legends tell a different story. They speak of ancient giants who arranged these stones as ceremonial spaces, their sheer strength allowing them to manipulate multi-ton slabs like children's toys. The site's so-called sacrificial table, a 5-ton grooved slab that channels liquids, mirrors similar structures in Europe attributed to Bronze Age rituals. Could these parallels hint at a shared, forgotten tradition, or merely the universal human impulse to explain the unexplainable? The archaeological record adds tantalizing, if controversial, clues. In the early 20th century, newspapers like the New York Times and Salt Lake Tribune reported discoveries of oversized skeletons in Midwest burial mounds, some reaching 9 feet in length. The Smithsonian's own archives contain letters from field agents describing anomalously large femurs and skulls unearthed during surveys, though many were later categorized as mastodon bones or mislabeled artifacts. Skeptics argue these cases reflect either honest mistakes or outright hoaxes like the infamous Cardiff giant. But the sheer volume of reports across tribal nations suggests something more persistent than mere fabrication. Perhaps the most compelling middle ground lies in the intersection of geology and mythology. The American landscape is dotted with natural formations that seem deliberately placed. From the volcanic pillars of Devil's Tower, sacred to the Lakota as the site where a giant bear clawed the rock, to the massive spherical boulders of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, nature has crafted stones that defy easy explanation. Indigenous cultures observing these wonders with no context for erosion or glaciation might have woven narratives to fill the gaps, yet the specificity of certain legends gives pause. The Navajo speak of the Yetso, giants slain by the hero twins, whose blood turned the Colorado River red, a story that eerily mirrors the region's iron-rich sediment. The Comanche describe the giants of the Wichita Mountains as having 6 fingers, a detail that resurfaces in Inca depictions of their own mythical giants. Deciphering these tales isn't just about separating fact from fiction. It's about understanding how cultures process their relationship with the land and its hidden histories. When the Choctaw say the Nahalo through stones, could they be encoding memories of seismic activity or meteor impacts? When the Paiute describe red-haired giants, might they be preserving encounters with an isolated population exhibiting genetic traits like gigantism or poliosis? The stones and the stories refuse to yield easy answers, but they invite us to listen closely, not just to the words, but to the echoes of a past where the line between history and legend was perhaps never meant to be clear. In the turquoise waters of Micronesia, the ruins of Nan Madol rise like a ghostly city from the lagoon. 92 artificial islands built from countless hexagonal basalt logs, some weighing up to 50 tons each. To stand among these silent, seaweed-draped corridors is to confront one of archaeology's most haunting questions. How did a society without metal tools or pulleys manipulate over 750,000 tons of volcanic rock? The Pohnpeians, indigenous to these islands, have an answer woven into their oral traditions. They speak of the twin sorcerers Olasipa and Olasopa, divine beings who flew the basalt pillars through the air, stacking them with a mere wave of their hands. Some versions of the legend describe them as giants, their stature matching the scale of their creations. Archaeologists, however, paint a different picture. Carbon dating suggests Nan Madol's construction began around 1200 AD, a time when Pohnpeian society was transitioning into a complex chiefdom. Studies of coral growth patterns reveal the islands were built incrementally, generations of laborers hauling stones from quarries miles away, using rafts and ropes to navigate the labyrinthine mangrove channels. The basalt logs themselves are natural columnar formations prized from volcanic cliffs with wooden wedges and water. It's a testament to human perseverance, but the math still staggers. Even with a workforce of thousands, moving just one 50-ton pillar would require weeks of coordinated effort. Here's where the myths and evidence collide in fascinating ways. While mainstream science dismisses the sorcerer narrative as metaphor, it's worth noting how precisely the legends align with logistical realities. The tale of flying stones might encode memories of an ingenious transport method, perhaps floating the basalt on bamboo rafts during high tide, making the massive logs seem to glide weightlessly across the water. The giants' involvement could symbolize collective labor where entire clans united under royal command, their combined strength appearing superhuman to later generations. Even the twins' divine status echoes Nan Madol's role as a ceremonial center where chiefs ruled with quasi-religious authority. But there's another layer to Nan Madol that defies simple explanation. The site's coral foundations grow in unnatural patterns, suggesting deliberate cultivation. Modern marine biologists have found evidence that Pohnpeians may have practiced a form of coral farming, strategically breaking and repositioning living coral to stabilize the islets over centuries. This wasn't just construction, it was symbiosis, a dialogue between human ingenuity and the ocean itself. Could the giants of legend represent this partnership, their mythical strength embodying the slow, relentless power of nature harnessed by human hands? The contrast between archaeology and oral tradition reveals something profound about how cultures process achievement. When faced with ruins that outshine their own technological means, descendants often reach for the supernatural. It's a pattern seen from Egypt to Easter Island. The greater the architectural feat, the more likely it's attributed to gods or giants. Yet Nan Madol's coral heartbeat reminds us that the truth might be even more remarkable. Ordinary people working in harmony with their environment can move mountains, or in this case volcanic pillars, one stone at a time. The real magic lies not in the hands of giants, but in the collective will of a society determined to build the impossible. The idea that history's secrets are locked away in vaults isn't just the stuff of adventure movies. It's a persistent claim in fringe archaeology, especially when it comes to giants. Among the most explosive accusations is that the Smithsonian Institution, America's flagship museum and research complex, deliberately destroyed or hid skeletal evidence of a lost race of giants to preserve conventional historical narratives. This theory hinges on scattered reports from the 19th and early 20th centuries, when newspapers brimmed with accounts of oversized skeletons pulled from Native American burial mounds. Many of these specimens allegedly vanished after being shipped to Smithsonian warehouses, fueling suspicions of a cover-up. But how much of this is fact and how much is feverish speculation? Take the case of the Hopewell Mounds in Ohio, where excavations in the 1880s unearthed skeletons measuring 7 to 8 feet tall, some adorned with copper armor. Local papers like the Cincinnati Enquirer documented these finds, yet the bones themselves never appeared in official Smithsonian catalogs. Conspiracy theorists point to internal memos like an alleged 1894 letter from a field agent describing anomalous remains, later deemed unsuitable for display as smoking guns. But skeptics counter with simpler explanations: poor record-keeping, mislabeled boxes, or even the mundane reality that organic materials degrade over time, especially when stored improperly in the era before climate-controlled archives. Then there's the curious story of David Barrow, a Tennessee farmer who claimed in 1934 that Smithsonian representatives confiscated and destroyed a 12-foot skeleton unearthed on his land. No paper trail confirms his account, and the Smithsonian denies it outright, yet the tale persists in conspiracy circles as proof of systemic suppression. Similar allegations swirl around the Adena Mounds of West Virginia, where early excavators reported giant femurs and skulls, only for the artifacts to disappear into bureaucratic limbo. Archaeologists offer a different perspective. Many so-called giant skeletons were likely misidentified megafauna bones, mastodon ribs mistaken for oversized human limbs, or deer femur joints misinterpreted as kneecaps of a towering race. Even authentic human remains sometimes appear larger due to soil pressure distorting burial positions, creating the illusion of extreme height when bones shift over centuries. And let's not forget the era's sensationalist press, where editors often exaggerated measurements to sell papers. A skeleton listed at 6 feet 6 inches in a field report might magically grow to 9 feet in the next day's headline. The Smithsonian itself has addressed these claims repeatedly, releasing audits of its collections and inviting independent researchers to review its archives. While gaps exist common for any institution handling millions of artifacts, no credible evidence proves a deliberate purge of giant bones. Yet the conspiracy endures, partly because it taps into a deeper skepticism of authority, and partly because history is full of legitimate cover-ups, from lost Native American cultural artifacts to suppressed medical experiments. The irony, some of the loudest giant evidence today originates from doctored photos and recycled hoaxes, like the infamous Canaanite giant image debunked as a digital manipulation. What's often overlooked in this debate is the real tragedy, the erasure of indigenous voices. Many mound-building cultures, from the Hopewell to the Cahokia, left behind intricate earthworks that early archaeologists attributed to mythical giants instead of the sophisticated societies who actually built them. By fixating on sensational claims, we risk eclipsing the true marvels of pre-Columbian engineering monuments that needed no giants to rise, just human ingenuity. The stones may stay silent, but the stories we choose to tell about them speak volumes. Bones don't lie, but sometimes they whisper secrets we're still learning to decipher. Take the case of an ancient Irish burial site near Rathcrogan, where excavations revealed skeletons measuring over 8 feet tall, their elongated bones prompting immediate speculation. Were these the remains of mythical giants or something far more human? Modern science offers a compelling answer. Many so-called giant skeletons likely belonged to individuals with medical conditions like pituitary gigantism or Marfan syndrome, disorders that cause abnormal growth. Gigantism occurs when the pituitary gland overproduces growth hormone, often resulting in heights surpassing 7 feet. Marfan syndrome, a connective tissue disorder, can create similar effects: elongated limbs, disproportionate features, traits that might have seemed superhuman to ancient observers. But here's where the mystery deepens. While these conditions explain some oversized remains, they don't account for the sheer volume of legends spanning continents. In Turkey's Cappadocia region, archaeologists unearthed skeletons with bone densities and proportions inconsistent with known disorders, their femurs suggesting a weight-bearing capacity far beyond modern humans. Similar anomalies appear in Chile's Atacama Desert, where a 6-inch-long, alien skull was later identified as human, yet its genetic mutations defied classification. Could these outliers hint at isolated populations with unique DNA, their traits exaggerated into legend over millennia? One tantalizing clue comes from DNA analysis of remains linked to the Denisovans, an extinct hominin species known only from fragmentary fossils. Geneticists discovered that modern Tibetans carry a Denisov-Anjun variant aiding high-altitude survival, proof that interbreeding introduced superhuman traits into our lineage. If Denisovans or other archaic humans passed down genes for extreme height or strength, might this explain the recurring motif of giants? The problem is evidence. Most alleged giant skeletons were lost or destroyed before modern testing could be done. The few available samples, like those from Lovelock Cave, show normal human DNA but with gaps in the data, leaving room for debate. The most plausible middle ground. A combination of rare biology and cultural memory. Isolated groups with genetic predispositions for height might have seemed like giants to shorter populations, their physicality immortalized in folklore. Add to this the human tendency to mythologize the extraordinary. A 7-foot-tall warrior with Acromegali's rugged features could easily become a 10-foot-tall, one-eyed cyclops in retellings. Yet the persistence of these stories, paired with scattered skeletal anomalies, ensures the debate endures. Whether through forgotten genes, medical marvels, or something beyond our current understanding, the bones of the past continue to challenge what we think we know about the limits of human form. From the frost-cracked realms of Norse sagas to the sun-scorched epics of India, cultures separated by continents and millennia whisper eerily similar tales. Giants didn't just roam the earth, they built it. The Norse Jötnar, towering beings born from primordial chaos, were said to have crafted the very bones of the world. Mountains became their workshop, rivers their tools. Meanwhile, in Hindu texts like the Mahabharata, the Danavas, a race of godlike giants, constructed celestial cities with walls that touched the sky. Their engineering prowess so advanced it threatened the gods themselves. These stories aren't isolated quirks of mythology, they're threads in a global tapestry suggesting something profound. Could these recurring archetypes of giant builders be fractured memories of a shared ancient reality? Dig deeper and the parallels grow harder to dismiss. The Greeks spoke of the Cyclopes forging Zeus's thunderbolts and building Mycenae's cyclopean walls, while in Mesoamerica, the Aztecs revered the Quinametsin, giants who erected the towering pyramids of Teotihuacan before the sun rose. Even the Bible's Nephilim, often portrayed as corrupt, were also called mighty men of renown, a phrase hinting at legendary feats of construction. What's striking isn't just the consistency of these narratives, but their specificity. Giants aren't just strong, they're master architects, their hands shaping the impossible. One compelling theory suggests these myths encode encounters with an advanced but vanished civilization. Imagine a post-cataclysmic world where scattered survivors, taller due to genetic drift or dietary advantages, passed down fragmentary knowledge of lost technologies to hunter-gatherers. To those struggling with flint tools, their ability to quarry and move megaliths would seem godlike, their stature magnified by awe over generations. Alternatively, consider the role of celestial symbolism. Many giant myths tie these beings to cosmic forces. The Jötnar embody glaciers and volcanoes. The Danavas represent cosmic imbalances. Could giants be metaphors for natural disasters that reshaped landscapes? Their constructions actually the results of tectonic shifts or meteor impacts? Yet the most tantalizing clues lie in the architectural details. The Danavas' cities, described as floating in the air, mirror the precision of Peru's Sacsayhuaman, where stones fit so tightly they defy seismic activity. The Jötnar's association with underground realms echoes the subterranean tunnels beneath Turkey's Derinkuyu, another megalithic marvel. Even the Cyclops' single eye might symbolize a centralized lens or tool, perhaps a monolithic drilling device hinted at in the vitrified stonework of Scotland's Dunadir Fort. The question isn't just whether giants existed, but why humanity's oldest stories insist they built our world. Maybe these legends are more than fairy tales. Maybe they're the frayed edges of a forgotten epoch, where the line between myth and history was written in stone. As the Jötnar would say, the bones of the earth remember. The real mystery is whether we're listening. So if giants weren't lugging these stones, how did ancient builders achieve the impossible? Another theory gaining traction suggests lost technology's secrets so advanced they border on science fiction. Take the concept of acoustic levitation. Tibetan monks speak of legends where massive stones were floated into place using the power of sound, chanting specific frequencies to reduce their weight. Experiments in modern physics show this isn't entirely far-fetched. Scientists have demonstrated acoustic levitation on small scales, using sound waves to suspend tiny objects in midair. Could ancient cultures have harnessed this on a monumental level? The precision-cut stones of Puma Punku, with their laser-like edges, might hint at tools beyond simple chisels, perhaps vibrational devices that softened rock like butter. Then there's the idea of anti-gravity or geomagnetic manipulation. Some researchers point to the strange vitrification, a glass-like fusion, found on certain megaliths as if they'd been exposed to extreme heat. Could these cultures have tapped into Earth's natural energy fields, using ley lines or magnetic currents to neutralize the weight of stone? The ancient Vedic texts describe vimanas, flying machines powered by mysterious energy called mercury vortex engines. While mainstream science dismisses these as myth, the parallels are striking. Cultures worldwide describing technologies that defy conventional physics. But here's the catch: for every proposed lost technology, there's a gap in evidence. No levitation devices have been unearthed, no ancient blueprints for anti-gravity machines. This is where the giant theory gains traction, not because it's proven, but because it's simpler. If a 12-foot-tall being with twice the muscle density of a modern human existed, moving a 200-ton block becomes less of an engineering puzzle and more of a brute force task. No need for sonic harmonics or geomagnetic hacks, just raw strength. Yet simplicity isn't always truth. Critics argue that gigantism brings its own problems. Taller bodies require exponentially more food and oxygen, making sustained labor implausible for a population. And why haven't we found definitive skeletal proof? The answer might lie somewhere in between. Imagine a culture where select individuals, through genetics or ritual knowledge, achieved feats that seemed superhuman. The Olmecs carved colossal heads weighing 20 tons without wheels or beasts of burden. The Easter Islanders claimed their moai walked. Maybe the truth isn't giants or lost tech, but a forgotten synergy of human ingenuity and natural forces we're only beginning to understand. At the heart of this debate is a deeper question. Why do we need giants or lost tech to explain the past? Perhaps it's our own bias, the assumption that ancient people couldn't possibly match our capabilities without supernatural aid. But look at the Great Pyramid's alignment to true north with pinpoint accuracy, or the Antikythera mechanism's celestial calculations. These weren't the work of magic or giants, but of meticulous observation and relentless experimentation. The stones whisper not of shortcuts, but of patient centuries of trial and error, knowledge passed hand to hand until the impossible became routine. So where does that leave us? Chasing giants may be less about uncovering literal titans and more about reconciling our own awe. When faced with achievements that dwarf our expectations, we invent taller builders because the alternative is admitting how much we've forgotten about the heights human hands can reach. The 21st century hasn't silenced the debate over ancient giants. If anything, new discoveries have poured fuel on the fire. Take the controversial case of Ecuador's craniums of the Andes, a collection of elongated skulls excavated between 2012 and 2014 by researcher Brian Forrester. These weren't just ritualistically deformed heads. Some measured 30% larger than typical human skulls, with cranial volumes suggesting brain capacities beyond Homo sapiens norms. Genetic testing revealed mitochondrial DNA mutations unknown in any recorded population, sparking claims of a lost species. Mainstream anthropologists dismissed the findings, pointing to congenital disorders or artificial cranial shaping, but the whispers of giants grew louder. Then there's the Caucasus Mountains discovery in 2018, where Georgian archaeologists uncovered skeletons measuring over 9 feet tall in a Bronze Age burial site. The bones showed signs of gigantism, but what raised eyebrows were the artifacts buried alongside them, stone tools scaled for hands nearly twice the size of a modern man's. Local legends immediately resurfaced, recalling tales of the Mkedrioni, a warrior caste of giants said to have defended the mountains. Skeptics countered that the tools could have been ceremonial or symbolic, yet the pairing of oversized remains with purpose-built objects left room for doubt. Fringe researchers like Dr. Greg Little, author of The Archaeological Enigma of Florida's Sunken Megaliths, argue that institutional bias suppresses such finds. He cites the 2019 exploration of a submerged cave system near Malta, where divers photographed what appeared to be a 12-foot skeletal frame encased in calcium deposits. Before official analysis could begin, the site was abruptly closed for safety reasons, fueling accusations of a cover-up. Meanwhile, mainstream critics like Dr. John Hoops of the University of Kansas dismissed these claims as cherry-picked anomalies. For every giant skeleton, he notes, there are 10,000 normally proportioned ones ignored because they don't fit the narrative. Technology has added new layers to the controversy. In 2021, a team using LiDAR scanning in Peru's Amazon basin identified geometric earthworks beneath the jungle canopy, structures aligned with celestial patterns, resembling scaled-up versions of known megalithic sites. Local Matses elders referred to the area as the place where the giants sang to the stars, a detail that took on eerie resonance when ground-penetrating radar detected subterranean chambers with acoustics mirroring Malta's hypogeum. Could these be remnants of a culture that manipulated sound or space in ways we barely understand? The debate often hinges on what constitutes proof. Geneticist Dr. Sharon Browning points out that degraded DNA from ancient samples frequently produces inconclusive or contaminated results, making bold claims premature. Yet when pressed about the Caucasus tools or Ecuador's skull mutations, she concedes, biology has surprises. We've barely scratched the surface of human variation. This measured skepticism contrasts sharply with figures like author Jim Vieira, who insists that Smithsonian-era suppression continues today. Gatekeepers control the narrative, he claims, pointing to delayed publication of anomalous radiocarbon dates from a Chilean excavation in 2022. What's undeniable is that the 21st century has democratized discovery. Satellite imagery, 3D modeling, and crowd-sourced archaeology have unearthed sites faster than institutions can catalog them. When a farmer in Turkey's Adıyaman province stumbled upon a buried femur nearly 4 feet long in 2023, the viral video sparked immediate comparisons to local legends of the Titan-like hake. Scientists rushed to clarify that the bone likely belonged to a prehistoric elephant, but the broader pattern remains. Every year, new reports surface, each met with swift debunking or hushed fascination. Perhaps the most telling development is the shift in tone among younger archaeologists. While their elders often dismiss giant theories outright, a growing contingent advocates for what Dr. Elena Solis calls mythoarchaeology, studying legends not as fiction but as distorted historical records. Oral traditions persist for a reason, she argues. The CTK weren't just red-haired giants to the Paiute. They were invaders, a cultural trauma preserved in story. That deserves investigation, not eye rolls. Whether these modern finds rewrite history or simply reflect our endless hunger for the extraordinary, they underscore a timeless truth. The past refuses to be boxed neatly into textbooks. As long as oversized bones emerge from the earth or hidden chambers hum with forgotten frequencies, the question will linger, not just whether giants existed, but why we're so determined to prove or disprove them. In chasing these shadows, we might be revealing more about ourselves than about any lost race of titans. Why do cultures separated by oceans and millennia keep telling the same stories about giants? The answer might lie less in forgotten bones and more in the wiring of the human brain itself. When faced with landscapes shaped by forces beyond comprehension, volcanic eruptions that flatten mountains, glaciers that carve valleys, or earthquakes that topple cities, early societies reached for explanations that matched the scale of what they witnessed. A 50-ton boulder deposited by an ice age becomes a stone tossed by a titan in battle. A collapsed cliffside transforms into the ruins of a giant's fortress. These aren't just fanciful tales, they're survival mechanisms, a way to make chaos feel intentional and the world knowable. Consider the concept of collective memory, the idea that traumatic or awe-inspiring events leave imprints on cultural consciousness, morphing over generations into myth. The Maori legend of the giant Tama Tikapua, who caused landslides with his footsteps, aligns eerily with New Zealand's geologic record of massive prehistoric earthquakes. Similarly, the Greek cyclopes, often depicted as volcanic smiths, might personify the explosive fury of the Mediterranean's active peaks. These stories serve as cautionary tales, encoding real environmental dangers in memorable, human-like forms. After all, it's far easier to fear a vengeful giant than the abstract concept of plate tectonics. But there's another layer to this phenomenon, the psychology of scale. When 19th century explorers first encountered the ruins of Great Zimbabwe, their minds refused to accept that indigenous Africans could have built such towering stone walls. They invented theories of Phoenician or biblical giants, anything to avoid confronting their own biases. This pattern repeats globally. The colossal moai of Easter Island must have been moved by mythical beings because the idea of Polynesian engineers solving the puzzle seemed implausible to outsiders. Giants become placeholders for cultural insecurities, a way to otherize achievements that challenge preconceived hierarchies. Literal interpretations of these myths often overlook their symbolic richness. The Norse Jötnar aren't just oversized brutes, they embody the uncontrollable forces of nature: frost, fire, and flood. The biblical Nephilim represent moral decay, their size mirroring the magnitude of their corruption. Even modern fantasy tropes like Tolkien's Ents or Game of Thrones giants follow this tradition. Towering figures symbolize existential threats, forcing humans to reckon with their smallness in the universe. Yet the persistence of giant lore suggests something deeper than metaphor. Cognitive scientists point to hyperactive agency detection, a hardwired human tendency to attribute unexplained phenomena to intentional actors. A rustling bush becomes a predator, a landslide becomes a giant's fist. Combine this with the transmission advantage of sensational stories. Tales of colossal beings are simply more memorable and shareable, and you have a recipe for myths that endure. The irony, in dismissing giants as pure fiction, we might be missing their greatest lesson. These stories reveal how humans navigate the tension between awe and understanding, between the measurable world and the mysteries that still loom large. Whether carved into cave walls or whispered across campfires, they remind us that sometimes the most enduring truths aren't written in stone but in the stories we wrap around them. Mainstream archaeology approaches the giant theory with a mix of patience and skepticism, grounded in a simple principle: extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. While the idea of ancient giants constructing megaliths captures the imagination, the scientific community points to a glaring absence of definitive proof. No verified skeletal remains of giant beings have survived rigorous scrutiny. The femurs and skulls cited in 19th century newspapers often crumble under modern analysis, revealed as misidentified mammoth bones or cases of gigantism, a rare medical condition affecting isolated individuals rather than entire populations. Even the elongated skulls of Paracas or the robust skeletons of Lovelock Cave, when subjected to DNA testing, consistently match known human genetic profiles, just with local variations or deformities. But the rebuttal goes deeper than missing bones. Archaeologists emphasize the staggering capability of communal labor, a force often underestimated. Take the construction of the Great Pyramid. by organizing tens of thousands of workers into rotating shifts, leveraging sledges, ramps, and counterweights, societies could achieve what seems impossible through sheer coordination. Experiments at University College London demonstrated how a team of 50 could move a 2-ton block with ropes and wooden tracks, a technique scalable to ancient projects through persistent effort. Sites like Göbekli Tepe reveal another key time. These weren't weekend projects. Generations dedicated lifetimes to quarrying, shaping, and placing stones, their incremental progress invisible to those who later marveled at the finished product. Occam's razor slices through the debate. The simplest explanation, human ingenuity, not mythical beings, aligns with the evidence we have, yet even scholars admit gaps persist. How were Baalbek's 1,000-ton blocks maneuvered without cranes? Why do some Andean walls fit with precision that defies hand tools? Here, mainstream archaeology offers nuanced answers. The Romans might have repurposed older megalithic foundations at Baalbek, inheriting technology lost to time. The Incas' vitrification theory, using plant acids to soften stone, gains traction with chemists finding trace oxalates on quarried surfaces. These aren't admissions of mystery but invitations to explore forgotten techniques, not giants. The most compelling argument against the giant theory lies in its own contradictions. If giants existed, where are their cities, tools, or refuse heaps? Why would only their construction sites survive, not their homes? Cultures that built megaliths left behind pottery, middens, and burials, evidence of ordinary human life. The stones themselves whisper a different story. Chisel marks at Karnak, rope grooves at Ollantaytambo, and quarry scars at Rano Raraku all point to methods we're still piecing together, not lost races. This isn't to dismiss the allure of giants. Myths endure because they resonate. But archaeology suggests a profounder truth. Our ancestors didn't need superhuman help. They had something more powerful: collective vision, patience, and an intimacy with materials we've since forgotten. The real giants, perhaps, were the societies that moved mountains through will alone. So where does this leave us, torn between myth and megalith, between the whispers of giants and the weight of hard evidence? On one side, the case for giant builders is woven from threads of global folklore, tantalizing skeletal anomalies, and the sheer logistical audacity of ancient construction. How else to explain Baalbek's 1,000-ton blocks or Sacsayhuaman's mortarless precision without invoking beings whose strength dwarfed our own? Legends from the Andes to the Arctic describe towering figures who shaped the land with bare hands, while scattered archaeological finds like those elongated skulls in Peru or the oversized tools in the Caucasus hint at populations that pushed the boundaries of human physiology. Even the Bible and the Book of Enoch describe hybrid beings, the Nephilim, whose corruption demanded their erasure from history, coincidence or fragments of a lost reality. Yet the skeptics wield Occam's razor with precision. No undisputed giant skeletons reside in museum collections, only misidentified fossils and medical oddities. The engineering feats of Göbekli Tepe and Stonehenge, once deemed impossible, now find plausible explanations in communal labor, ingenious leverage, and generations of trial and error. Cultures worldwide mythologized natural forces, earthquakes, glaciers, volcanoes as giants, a poetic shorthand for the incomprehensible. And let's not forget the human penchant for tall tales. The Cardiff giant fooled thousands, while newspaper hoaxes padded their evidence with sensationalism. But what if the truth isn't an either-or? Imagine a middle path where rare genetic conditions like gigantism or Marfan syndrome produced individuals who seemed like titans to their shorter peers. Their feats, amplified by time, became legend. Or consider the possibility of lost civilizations, survivors of some prehistoric cataclysm, whose advanced techniques appeared godlike to later societies. The acoustic mastery of Malta's hypogeum or the celestial alignments of Nan Madol suggest knowledge we're still reconstructing. Maybe giants weren't literal beings, but metaphors for collective human achievement, societies that became giants through unity and innovation. The stones themselves refuse to yield easy answers. They stand as both monuments and riddles, daring us to unravel their secrets. Perhaps that's the real lesson. The past is never as simple as we want it to be. It's a puzzle where folklore, biology, and archaeology interlock in ways we're only beginning to grasp. So what do you think? Were megaliths the work of giants, the sweat of forgotten engineers, or something even stranger? Drop your theories in the comments and stay tuned, because next time we're diving into the wild world of ancient technology. From acoustic levitation to vitrified stone, the evidence for lost tech might just reshape everything you thought you knew. Until then, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, history's greatest stories are often hidden in plain sight.